What's going on, everybody? Almost Counts Collectibles here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Wave 1 release of the Retro Morphing Power Ranger figures from Hasbro. Now, when I first saw Wave 1 actually announced, I was kind of concerned because it only contained 4 Rangers, and one of those Rangers that was not included was the Yellow Ranger Trini. Now, all of you probably will remember that with the Legacy re-release of the Automorphin figures, we never actually ended up receiving Trini, the yellow Automorphin Ranger. Even though she was previewed, she was shown to have been at least designed and created, she was even featured on the back of the packaging of the Automorphin Legacy figures, and Trini was also up for order on Walmart.com, although her status was always out of stock. Now, I'm pretty sure the entire reason why we never actually ended up receiving Trini is because of the sale of the franchise to Hasbro from Bandai. Although there could have been likeness, ownership rights issues and things like that involved with her likeness and her head sculpt. I'm not 100% sure on that, but we never ended up receiving our Yellow Ranger. So when I saw 4 of the 5 Rangers teased and finally released for the actual Wave 1, I was a little concerned that once again Yellow Ranger was not present. But as I'm making this video, you can rest assured that Trini has arrived. She is in Wave 2, which has already been released, and I will be doing a video on Wave 2 in a separate video coming up soon. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at Wave 1. Now with Wave 1, we received Billy, Kim, Jason, and Zach. Now there's a lot of things that I really like about these Automorphin Rangers, and there are things that I don't care for so much. I will give you my overall thoughts on the figures at the end of the video, but for right now we're going to go ahead and take a look at them. So let's go ahead and pull Jason here to the front. Now, as you can see, much like the original Rangers, they all come with their primary weapon and their power blaster. Now the holsters, I will go ahead and start with that. The holsters on these figures are not a hard plastic mold like the original Rangers. It is more of a rubberized mold, which I do like a lot more. I think it's more realistic. It is a little bit flexible. And you can also put the blaster in 2 different ways, with the actual handle facing to the back or the front, whichever you prefer, unlike the original figures that only had a cutout on one side. So I did like that about the holsters. I really like the Morpher Buckle. They look just like the Ranger's Morpher. They even have the detailed power coin for that individual Ranger right there on the buckle. So I thought that was a huge improvement over the old just silver buckle type lever with the red little coin void in the middle. So I really liked that. Another thing with the weapons are pretty detailed as far as the mold goes. Even the grip of Jason's handle on his sword is raised up, and you can feel the detail on it. And for the most part, each individual weapon is the actual primary color of that weapon. So for instance, with Jason's sword, one of the largest parts is the blade itself, which is this, metal looking color. With a little bit of paint detail, you can actually customize these weapons to look really show accurate. Just like with Zach's power axe right here, its main color is black, which is the primary color of the power axe. So we could add some yellow detail and things like that to it and get it looking very show accurate. So I really appreciated that about the weapons. Now the weapons do all go together to form the power blaster as well, which is also really cool. We'll take a look at that here in a minute for the weapons that we have in Wave 1 that we can combine. Now when we talk about the overall paint of the Rangers, as you will notice, we no longer get the depiction of the Ranger's actual Dino Zord on the chest. It is a more show accurate, just full on white diamond. And overall, the paint of the Rangers all the way around is pretty show accurate. I mean, it looks a lot better than the original paint scheme on the old Automorphin Ranger. So I really liked that. Now, the other thing that I really appreciated about these Rangers, although they did not pull it off as well as I would have hoped, is the Automorphin function itself. Over all the years of Automorphin Rangers, there have been different mechanisms and different ways that the Automorphin function works. And these Rangers actually modeled their Automorphin function after the Zeo Automorphin Rangers, which if you've seen my Zeo Automorphin review, you will know that that is my absolute favorite mechanical operation of the automorphin function that we have ever seen. And the way that it works on these particular Rangers is we have the lever right here in the back, and instead of the original automorphin function, so we're going to go ahead and look at our original Automorphin Red Ranger right here. The original automorphin function was just a one-way action. So you had to manually reset the head every time you want to do it. So there's a spring inside that you can press by folding the head, you press down on the morpher, and then the Ranger automorphs by flipping the head forward. If you want to do it again though, you can't simply keep pressing the lever. You have to manually reset the head back and continue to morph again, and so on and so forth. Wash and repeat. Now, these Rangers actually modeled their automorphin function off of the original Zeo Rangers, and they work very much just like they did. So here's the original red Zeo Ranger. You press down on it, it flips the head forward with one nice little smooth motion, and then it stops it in place, and then you do it again. For the most part, as long as it's in good working order, it's a pretty smooth automorphin function. All right, now that brings me to these Rangers. They modeled themselves after the Zeo automorphing function. However, they did not execute this very well. So you press down, and then this is what you get. There is a lot of recoil on that spring that severely vibrates the actual head model until it stops and you lock it into place. Now, even if you try to do it pretty quickly and lock the head into place, it is still, and I pressed it too quick there. I'm gonna see if I can turn it to the side here so you can see it. Even if you do it quickly, the head still bounces back and forth pretty good. So I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't like all of the recoil that takes place. I don't like that it's not smooth like the Automorphin Zeo Rangers. I mean, if you do it extremely fast, it's kind of hard to tell. But if you take just a second to do it, that head flops around pretty good. Let's see if we can go ahead and do a comparison here real quick. So you will notice that the Zeo Ranger, I mean, it flips, it stops, and it locks into place, and this one just bounces around like crazy. So I'm not a fan of how that happens, but I am glad the overall mechanism was modeled after the Zeo Automorphin figures. I think it pulled it off the best. So now that we've got the Automorphin debut and kind of review out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the head sculpt itself. Now, another thing I really liked about these figures is the head sculpts. I thought they were a lot more defined, a lot more realistic looking than the original little plastic faces that we got. Although I never had huge complaints with the original Automorphin figures. It's just this right here looks a lot more like Jason than the original Automorphin, molds actually did. When I look at that, I can see the facial, features of Jason with the cheeks and I mean the hair and everything like that. And I just think it looks a lot better than the original. So I really like the head sculpts, and I can pretty much say that about all of Wave 1. I think their head sculpts, although I don't really know the term to use, I think they're a little more animated looking, but I just like the overall symmetry and the overall look of the head sculpt. I think they do look better. Now, the last thing which I do appreciate about the figure, although I don't think it was done necessarily perfectly, is the articulation. So when we talk about articulation, of course, we have full articulation in the actual shoulder right here. As you can see, the arm gets very, very skinny right there, which I think looks a little weird. But the articulation is there in the elbow. We have, you can turn it a full 360 degrees, but the mold of the back actually drops down a little bit. So you would have to move the hand down a little bit to actually turn it that far, but it will spin all the way around 360. And then of course you get this, 90-degree joint turn. Now, when we go down to the legs down here, just below the waist, I do like the fact that the hips actually pull out. I mean, you can pull them all the way out to the side to do a split pretty much if you wanted to. So I do appreciate that. And then we have full, 90 degrees forward and down right there at the hip. We can spin the legs all the way around 360. And then again, we have the joint that bends right here, almost 90 degrees. But with the way that it's molded right here, you don't get full 90. So I do appreciate the articulation. It's just that some of these joints are extremely stiff. So it's just, I don't know, it's kind of hard to actually, if you wanted to get any kind of play out of them as a kid, posing them and stuff isn't going to be very easy. And I could almost see these actually breaking or having issues for a kid actually trying to play with them. Now, from a collector's standpoint, naturally, I like to pose them and things like that, but I'm not trying to have, full-on battle scenes with these. So to me, it really doesn't bother me, but as a toy from a kid's standpoint, as opposed to the original Rangers, which although they didn't have as much articulation, it was easy to maneuver the articulation that they did have. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on the articulation part. So there are overall a lot of things I really like about these retro Automorphin Rangers. But one of the main things that really bothers me, and I can say the same about other figures, even the original figures from the 90s, all the way from Automorphin, Mighty Morphin to the In Space Ranger figures, even though we didn't get Automorphin In Space Rangers. It is the overall physique of the figure that really either makes or breaks it for me. And unfortunately, these figures are just way too wide and way too thick, and it really kills the overall look of the figures for me. I mean, they're extremely wide. Their torsos from hip to hip. So their arms actually aren't bad. They don't have these giant, like, muscular arms, even kind of like the Automorphin Zeo did, where you had this huge defined muscle coming out of the actual suit, and the Turbo Rangers and stuff were even worse. But it's just the overall physique. They are just way too thick and way too wide, and it really takes away from the look. I mean, they are much larger than even the original Automorphin Rangers, and I don't like it. I don't think they display well. I don't think they look well overall. They just don't look like a Power Ranger. Power Rangers, they were, skinny ninjas pretty much. And Jason here looks like he's had one too many Big Macs. I don't know. It's just a very large looking figure, and especially for the females. The females are just as big as the males. And I mean, if they were in the show, if they had the same physiques and they were true to the show, then okay. But, all of the females were much more petite than the male Power Rangers. So for them to be these big, large, wide, thick-looking figures as well, it just really takes away from the look of the figures. I do not think these display well. I am going to, put them on a shelf by themselves, but as far as just looking at them, they just don't look very good. I mean, the overall physique just isn't there, and that really kills it for me from somebody who collects and likes to display. I just don't like the overall look of them, unfortunately. As many good things as they got right with the overall look and the paint and even the articulation, it's just the overall look of the figure that it just really kills it for me. So unfortunately, that is pretty much my thoughts on the retro Automorphin figures. Now we will go ahead and take a look at the head sculpts of the other Rangers. So here we have Kim. Even Kimberly's head really doesn't bother me. I think they got the jaw right, the hair color and everything like that. I really don't mind the look of Kim right here. I think she looks okay. Maybe not perfect, but she definitely looks okay. We've got Billy here. Now, Billy is probably one of the weirdest looking ones, although I still don't think it's ruined. We have his glasses there, of course. And I just don't think they really got it with the face sculpt of Billy. But I mean, clearly, you know, this is Billy because of the glasses and things, but I think he is the weakest of the head sculpts, but I still don't think it is terrible. And then here we have Zach. I think they did a good job on Zach. I mean, I liked Zach's head sculpt. I thought, I mean, that looks like Zach for the most part for what they were able to do with it. And I just did like the head sculpts for the original Rangers. Now, I haven't fully compared the size to see if it would even look right, but I'm almost half tempted to take the head sculpts off of the retro Automorphin figures and try to put them on my original Automorphing figures that I have modified to be more show accurate. So if it looks okay, I might do that, because like I said, I do like the head sculpts and I even prefer them over the original ones, but it's just this really wide body that is killing the look of these Rangers for me. All right, let's talk about the weapons real quick. Now, the weapons and even the hands. I mean, if you look at the hands on these figures, and it might be kind of hard to notice in the camera, but Kim here has some monstrous hands. I mean, those hands they look huge. They look like Hulk hands. And I thought their hands should have been a little bit smaller. I mean, her 4 fingers are literally wider than the areas around her bicep. And to me, I mean, the hands just should have been smaller. I don't know. So yeah, that's just my opinion, but those are some Hulk hands in my opinion. They're just very large looking hands. But let's get back to what we were talking about anyway. So we've got the power bow here. Let's go ahead and grab Billy's power lance. And just FYI, Billy's power lance actually does go together. If I turn it the right way, maybe, there we go. So Billy's power lance does go together. I really liked how they did this, how it actually goes inside and it didn't have these overlapping brackets. I don't really think which way you face it matters. Yeah, it'll go either way. I just didn't press it in there hard enough. So we got Billy's power lance. Let's go ahead and grab the power sword. So we'll have everything but Trinee's daggers on here. But when we do wave 2, we'll actually take a look at her daggers. All right, so here we have the power axe. So we're gonna go ahead and place the power bow up here where it goes. And these fit together, they fit together nice and snug, but you don't have to worry about breaking off those little pegs that usually always broke on the original toys if you were too rough with them. All right, let's put the power sword on top. Once again, we're missing the power daggers, but that's okay. All right, and we have an almost complete power blaster. And like I said, those go together pretty snug. And I just try to be super careful with things, which is why it took me an extra second to do that. But I mean, you can fling those pretty hard and they don't even budge. I really liked the construction of the power weapons here. So, once again, several things that I feel like they did right on these figures. It's just sometimes the one thing that they don't get right just really ruins something for me. And unfortunately, and here's what I'm talking about, the articulation is kind of hard to maneuver on these figures. I'm trying to get Jason to where he'll stand up and not be back heavy. I don't know if we're going to accomplish that task, but we're going to try. All right. I think Jason's going to stay with our power blaster here. All right, so these are the Automorphin Wave 1 figures. Now, these things retail at about $9.99 each if you're lucky enough to find them at a retail price. Nowadays, as I'm sure many of you know, collectibles, action figures, at least ones, you know, that are a little bit higher quality, they're extremely hard to get your hands on these days. Usually they sell out very quickly. If there's even that big of a stock to begin with at the store, people sell them for, you know, double, triple, quadruple the price. And you can end up paying, you know, 40 bucks for one of these. Now at $9.99 a piece, I do think they are a very good addition to your Power Ranger collection, even though the overall display and look of the figure I just don't think is there. It kind of bothers me. But I do think they are cool figures and they have a lot to like about them. At $20+ for any of these figures, I would probably pass on them unless you just really want to add them to your collection. The Wave 2 figures that are currently out right now, some people are selling them for $80 to $100 for the set of 4. And for the green and white Ranger that are a part of the Wave 2 figures, some people are asking upwards of $50 a piece for those. Now we will do a review on those in a separate video. So I will talk about my thoughts on those and what I feel like they are worth. But these particular figures at $10 each, I don't think is bad, but I wouldn't pay that much more for them. And that is just my personal opinion. So these are the actual Wave 1 figures. Now, before we actually wrap it up, let's go ahead and talk about the packaging. The packaging for these actual figures did not, and I'm going to adjust you guys up a little bit, they did not try to duplicate the original packaging, once again, like the Legacy line did. It is much smaller, and just for comparison, this is actually the Legacy re-release of one of the figures. But here real quick, you can just kind of see the size difference. I mean, these cards are huge over here on the originals. It is all, I mean, it's a good 3, maybe 3+ inches shorter on the card for these. And let's see, probably a good 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches skinnier. So much smaller packaging. They did kind of go with that, you know, retro look. The coloring, the layout and placement of some of the logos and stuff are very similar, but it is not a replica of the original card. No power coin. You know, the large picture over here to the side isn't there. All of the Rangers aren't featured or depicted under the Power Ranger sign. So a lot of differences, but some similarities. On the back here, we have the 4 Rangers that are in Wave 1. They show you how to combine and make the Power Blaster. And, you know, overall just a bunch of different languages, warnings, copyrights, all that stuff at the bottom. I really don't like this. I do not like how they just fill up pretty much an entire card with just gibberish and stuff that we don't want to see. I just don't like how like half of the back of the card is taken up with all of this writing. But that is just my opinion, and there is the card. Now, just for a quick comparison, once again, not necessarily size this time, but just overall look. So we have our 2 cards here. The different depictions right here. We have the actual tattoo of the power coin and all that good stuff. And then at the bottom down there, of course, we have Automorphin Power Ranger Jason, and then we'll take a look at the back and see the huge difference. Now, even on the Legacy version, there was writing everywhere, but some of this was the official story. Some of it was instructions, you know, on how to do the tattoo, a larger depiction of the Power Blaster, and, you know, we get large pictures and advertisements of the other Rangers and villains. This did not bother me nearly as much as this did, because almost half of the card is taken up by it. So, you know, that is just a comparison of the original cards. And once again, one quick shot of the front. All right, everybody. Well, that has been my review of the Retro Morphin Power Ranger figures from Hasbro. We will be taking a look at Wave 2 here shortly, and the 5th member of technically Wave 2 still, we will also take a look at here in the future. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns about the figures, or want to know anything more, please let me know. But once again, got a lot of things right, but the overall look just kind of killed it for me with the actual size of the figures. So we're going to go ahead and say goodbye for now, and until next time, everybody, I will see you next video.